You were in the industry for quite some time, wearing many different hats, and you had friends that had been in the space, and they're still in the space.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love to get your opinion on how that happens, because this industry, as you well know, can be very thankless. It can be very demanding on individuals, individual families, personalities, emotions, mental stability, all of those things. There's so many issues that this industry is plagued with. And after so many years, a lot of people just get burnt out.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you feel like some of the friends that you have that are still in this space, or not even necessarily friends, but people that you know have been in it for 25, 30 years, what is the trick that you think? Obviously, you're not in their shoes, you don't know, but if you were putting on your reporter hat and had to write an article on how to resist the burnout or how to beat the burnout in this industry.
Sort of like a Dickensian resignation to fate. It's over, buddy. You're done.
Right.
No, it's I don't think there is any sort of uniform code of sticking to it. I think it's some people have a genuine passion for the industry. For other people, I should also say that it's very different for the front than it is for the back.
Yeah, they're two like completely different systems, people, everything. And those that think they're not, they need to spend more time in a restaurant.
Yeah.
Sorry, continue your thought.
No, I once worked for a chef who was I think he was ex-Catholic, Jewish, Italian, Boston gay guy.
It'd be easier to just say what he wasn't, I think.
Yeah, right. But he sounded, his name was Michael, and he sounded like Christopher Walken. And he was a chef, wow. And he'd be like, Andrew, I worked with this guy for a long time, so I can do his voice better than I can do Christopher Walken. But he'd say, Andrew, take this food out for me. And I'd run the food, and he would, he made it very clear to me that I was like he'd say, you're like VHS. I'm a movie, but I was like the content delivery system.
You're the vehicle.
Yeah. So there's not a lot of romance in that. Mm-hmm. And I think for a lot of people, they want to have, and this is sort of a long game philosophical perspective that I'm throwing out here. It's not like the 1 shift, 2 shift. What's my schedule like for the next week and a half? At the end of your career, you can look back and there's a register of what you've done. And I think that I'm 45, and when I started to think about what I was contributing to the world, when I was in my, say maybe when I first started having kids, I was like, okay, what am I contributing to the world? I felt like I wasn't contributing much. And I thought, okay, well, if you can't contribute through your line of work, which at that point was working in the front of house, is there a way? Is there a way where you can, because you're passionate about this, that you can make this be of import to other people, that you can share what it is that you love? And I navigated my own route through media, but I think that for a lot of people, they'll do it through ownership. Mm-hmm. So there's a glass ceiling to not a glass ceiling, a very thin sort of balsa wood ceiling between being a general manager or a sommelier or a chef and becoming a restaurant owner. It's almost like the inertia of all those years of experience pushing you through the ranks. You get to a point where it's okay, either I stay in this position or I go whole hog and become an owner. And then you get to call the shots, and then you get to potentially make history, change your city, change the neighborhood, change people's lives, be a part of somebody's lives in a bigger way where you're calling the shots. You're not, just floating along, not doing much. But there's a difference in the restaurant industry that always drove me mad, that in poetry and art, in architecture, in law, in all sorts of media, when you accomplish something, it's there, and there's a sense of permanence. Mm-hmm. You can look it up, you touch can refer to it, you can cite it, like in a court of law. You can You can read it again if you want. You can look at that piece of art. You can sell it. You can buy it. You can rent it out. You can
gift it.
There's value to it that exists beyond the moment of its creation and the length of the journey of its lifetime. With a restaurant, when it's over, when it closes, that's it. Nobody gives a shit anymore. It's done. You might have a few people that will fondly remember that was the place that they were engaged or had their first date or their kid choked on broccoli or whatever. But there is no cultural value to a restaurant that no longer exists, which to me is almost societally criminal. Like it just doesn't compute to me that a place that has sort of engendered and fostered the journeys of so many people. And I'm not talking about staff.
Yeah.
I'm talking about customers, people that go in. Yeah. People who are like, man, I had the greatest meal of my life at this place. So we should hang out there. Let's meet at this place. Or I'm really nervous about this date I've got, you know, at this place. But 2 years down the line, when that place doesn't make it, there's no memory of it. It's wiped clean. So I was looking, we found a fix on Scout for at least for me, where I'm like, I can remember these places, because if you do what I do, you welcome as many restaurants as you say goodbye to. And it's hard to say goodbye. So I was writing a story and I needed to have a photo. I can't remember exactly what I was looking for, but I was doing a Google image search on Feeneys, which is Rob Feeney's more casual restaurant on West Broadway. And there was nothing. It closed, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. Yeah. And there was nothing there on Google. And it's like the Google had wiped it clean. There were some tangential references to it and stories, but there were no photos that sort of revealed what the interior looked like. There were no details about, you can go to Chef DB and see who was the sous chef for a certain year. But beyond that sort of inside baseball statistical stuff, there was nothing that attested to the value it had in the community when it was there. And it was a big deal. It was a big deal for Vancouver's food scene when Rob Feeney won Iron Chef America. You know, it was like, holy shit.
He can cook.
People were, you know, we laugh about it now, but back then that meant something. And when it's gone, it doesn't matter. Now, name me another industry where that happens. You know, you make a shitty film, it's on still DVD. There. It's still, you can stream it on like 10 different things. They're still making.
Still talk about it.
Dude, Joe Dirt. Yeah. Feeney's was like 1,000 times better than Joe Dirt. But I can, if I want. But you know, you can look at Joe Dirt on YouTube. You can get clips on it. You know, you get the full cast and crew, the making of, and so on. But is it of cultural import more than Feeney's was for the city of Vancouver? No, not at all. So we eat our young. We discard our dead. And so with Scout, we developed something called this is typical me. Let's come up with a concept that it's impossible to make money with.
And so then just invest in it heavily.
yeah, right. So I came up with this thing called the Restaurant Graveyard, where it's an A to Z map of. It's right on Scout. It's right on the front page. Check it out if you haven't before, because it's kind of fun. And for people who've just moved here, it's important to know that there are people that came before. That before there was L'Abattoir, that's the original location of the Irish Heather.
Right.
And behind it was the original location of the Shebeen, where Jailer's Muse is now. You know, and there are some restaurants like where Corner Suite Bistro Deluxe used to be and is now, I think, a retail store or something like that. There were 4 different restaurants in 4 different years. So for me, I love source material because I studied history, it's like no one else is doing this. There's so much material out there, like primary source material, where if I want to, I can call up, Mia Stainsby and say, hey, remember that review that you wrote of that? Like, I need that. I can't find a copy of it. There's source material out there. So it's like a mine, albeit not a precious metal. I understand that. But for me, it's so much juicy material that I can just get my hands onto and have there be a depository for people to put memories. So we try and contribute to that. Put by a new restaurant, I mean like a restaurant that could have closed 50 years ago or like 5 years ago. up each week with a photograph, and just sort of, these are the people that work there. This is the restaurant that it took its place, you know, and have, you know, it sort of builds up a constellation of memory for the food and beverage scene in Vancouver, because there's no alternative.
Yeah, it is very whimsical, but at the same time sad as well. I mean, I don't know if I had a restaurant, if I would want to be on the what are you calling it, the restaurant?
The restaurant graveyard. Yeah, I know, but
there's a stigma attached to it.
Sure, but
there's also honesty in it as well.
Yes, so that's the job of the historian, is to be 100% dispassionate.
Yeah, factual. Yeah,
yeah. It's like, I'm sorry that it hurts their feelings
but
that your restaurant is here, but people need to know that this place was here. Otherwise, it's completely forgotten. You know, there was actually I can't remember if it was on my personal Facebook or on Scout's Facebook, but there was somebody who's like, this kind of sounds creepy and lame, and I was like, okay, maybe this is creepy and lame. But the feedback as soon as it got up, like just hundreds and hundreds of comments on that feature of people saying, you got to remember, you know, this place that was open.
Oh, so like feeding you with ideas.
Oh, dude,
cool.
It's like, I've got enough work. If I quit everything else and just focused on that, I would be in good stead for years and years and years.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And you can facilitate those like synapses firing again for people, and maybe remembering, oh my God, I forgot about.
Exactly.
And I think for me, when you're describing this, one thing that I'm kind of reminded of is looking at what the team, the Pepinos team did with the old Nick's Spaghetti House.
Yeah.
That to me is a very rare situation, a bit of an anomaly in the industry, where someone comes in, quote unquote, new, kind of keeps a lot of what was. I never attended Nick's Spaghetti House, so I apologize. I didn't know what it was before it was Pepino's, but from what I've read, both on your website and speaking to the people that are behind the project, they tried to, as best they could, to embody kind of what it
to
was.
honor what was there.
So if guests, say my grandparents, if they were to go back, they'd be like, you know what, it still kind of smells the same, and it looks the same.
It doesn't smell it smells better.
but that's so rare, right? But I was wondering, as you're describing that as well, is there a potential that, hypothetically speaking, say you and I are junior sous chefs or line cooks at this space, and it's about to shut down, and then it does shut down, but it was a great restaurant, and it did great for the community. Is it possible that 5 years later, you and I get together and we resurrect what that was in our own interpretation, and then therefore it's still kind of living on? Or is that just a little bit too dreamy and wishy-washy? Brad, doesn't really make sense? Or does that ever happen?
Okay, well, there are a couple of things there. One, it doesn't have to make sense. It makes sense to you, right? So that's
I appreciate that.
Right. Does it happen? It happens in weird ways, where chefs will resurrect, like within a stone's throw of where you're recording this right now. There's a sandwich on the menu at Bells and Whistles that is a clear across the board homage to a food truck sandwich that used to be on at La Brasserie's food truck.
Okay.
I can't remember what it's called, but it's basically a bun, mayonnaise, roasted chicken, gravy, and breaded fried onions.
Oh, beautiful.
And it's disgustingly messy, but it's so damn delicious. It's like Christmas on a bun, minus the cranberry sauce. Now, it's a direct
tip of the hat
to that. And there's a restaurant called Au Petit Chavignon in that was attached to Les Amis de Fromage. That's a lot of French, I know, I'm sorry. In Strathcona, and Au Petit was a wine bar that was attached to the cheese shop. So there was like raclette and fondues, but they did this amazing cheeseburger, what I thought was the best cheeseburger in the city, because the best cheeseburger is always going to be determined on the best cheese.
Oh, for sure.
Right? And if you're a cheese shop, you got some weird shit that you can put on there. And so they did, like, I thought, like, this fantastic burger, and then they shut down the restaurant. And then there are people that still talk about, like you mentioned, Pepino's, the owner, Paul Grunberg, I know is a huge fan of this burger. And there are other people that still speak of this burger. Okay. And the owner of Les Amis de Fromage, every once in a while, I don't think every once in a while, but at least once, called me and Paul and a few other people and said, I miss my burger. Come into the restaurant after hours, and I'm going to make this burger, and we can just sit down and we can quietly eat this burger.
It's like a burger fight club.
sort of. But there are, there are so many chefs and restaurateurs in this city that that were really on to something at a certain point, and then it just didn't, for whatever reason, it didn't work out. That financial crash that happened in what was it, 2008, 2009?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That to me is the great dividing. If I was a geologist, I call it the glacial period. That was the last glaciation. And we're still living with the effects and the population that survived that glaciation. And I'm not kidding. Like, there are restaurants that just opened and died right around that time. And some of them, like, it scared people. Like, we had Daniel Balut here. He took over the Feeneys spot and put a DB Bistro and took over the Lumiere. Gone.
Have you ever read that? Have you ever read the Eater article?
Oh, yeah, sure.
He's just like, he would never come back to Vancouver.
Yeah, well, see you later, buddy. You couldn't figure it out. Also, it's just poor timing.
Yeah.
No matter what he might...
Doesn't matter what the city is.
Yeah. The romanticization of it, that's up to him. But I know what happened.
Yeah.
I know what happened to the guys at Campagnolo, and they had fuel, and that had to shut down at 1944 West 4th. They opened with dreams of high-end fine dining, and they couldn't hack it because they opened right before that happened. So they had to retool things, and they opened Refuel in its place, which was like fried chicken. Let's do this.
Right.
Gastropod at 1938 West 4th, like right next door. That's Chef Angus, and he did like this high-end West Coast sort of idiosyncratic thing, which is fucking awesome. And it was great. I just remember my first time eating there going, this is so amazing and so exciting for Vancouver's food future. Boom, recession happens, it shuts and becomes Mainon.
Yeah.
No complaints there. Like, that's a win-win for us.
Yeah, unreal. Such a great spot.
Another contemporary of Angus's was the chef at St. Lawrence and Ask for Luigi. When he first tried his independent kick at the can, he opened a place called Chow, CHOW. Now, no one remembers it, but it was impactful for the time. This is just like two blocks south of West on South Granville.
Okay.
Awesome restaurant. Super, super good. Recession hit, gone. And that was his first sort of independence move. But there were casualties of that are no longer remembered, that, these people, I'll still talk to those people about, like, the oysters with horseradish snow at Gastropod. Like, can we do that sometime? Are you ever going to open that again? And, I know that a guy like Chef Robert Belgium, is cooking below his weight class. Like, he is an extraordinarily talented chef who, is doing spaghetti and pizza and burgers.
Yeah.
And fuck, they're so good, but that's the consequence of that glaciation. Now, everyone's happy. He's probably making more money now than he was then, but that's a consequence of the glaciation.
It's kind of like you just writing about food. You know what I mean?
You got to
you have more talents. You have more to offer.
The difference is that I wasn't forced to.
Correct.
That was a whimsy, sort of like creative Hamlet kind of thing, where I was talking to a skull.
Where it was dictated.
Stoned at
where it was dictated
3 a.m.
Robert, right.
Right. By circumstances beyond his control. So yeah, I think that there can be a second life to food and drink. I hope so, because when things are delicious, they don't stop being delicious. It's just that the avenues towards which you can feed that deliciousness to a paying, willing public can be stifled by all kinds of shitty traffic.
Yeah, exactly. Well put. I would be remiss not to pick your brain about trends. As someone who now is getting into restaurant consulting, and a lot of times I wear very many different hats, and one of them is trying to figure out what is here to stay, what works, what's next. What are you seeing right now, or what do you see on the horizon that you feel like is the next trend? I mean, we're seeing a big success with the model, like the download chicken model is doing very well right now. That's very approachable, and people are lining up ad nauseum for that. I don't know if you want to call a trend to a place like Jam Cafe, where for some reason on a Tuesday afternoon at 3:00 there's still a lineup for breakfast food. Are there any other trends that you're seeing or that you have seen that are coming and or going quickly? Like the rainbow bagel, or those that kind of stuff.
Well, that stuff is ephemeral. It's really there's so much, if I can use the term, masturbatory bullshit that goes on with cooking and the marketing of said cooking that kind of gets in the way of. I wouldn't call those are flashes in the pan. They're not trends. It's not a gold future,
Right.
in rainbow bagels or donuts or whatever.
Yeah.
The fact, the one unifying fact of the restaurant business is that deliciousness sells, and then everything else makes that deliciousness all the more attractive. I talk about traffic getting in the way of the creative and the consumer. The creative being the chef, and then the consumer being us with the mouths and the teeth and the tongues. If you can do something that's delicious and remove all the traffic, you've got a good chance of doing well. So when you see things like, Doug and Lindsay doing Down Low, there's not a lot of traffic other than that lineup. Fuck that lineup.
Exactly.
I just live like 3 blocks from there, and the number of times that I've gone there and just been, oh fuck.
Yeah.
Fuck you people.
Yeah, exactly.
Not Lindsay.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just like the 80 people
else
in the lineup.
Right. Not you two, but everybody else.
Yeah. They're like meat and bread is another example where it's just, okay, porchetta sandwich. That's something delicious. It's just, give me this thing that you created without the bullshit of everything else, the extraneous stuff, and I'm happy. So deliciousness works. That's the number one thing. I think the secret to Jam Cafe is that they know what people like. They know that they're scratching all these itches. There's a lot of cooking that is determined by the aspirational side of cuisine. There's where it's, I want my cooking to soar. Right. I want to get into the heads of people and make people. I want to convey ideas through my cooking, and that's good. A lot of it is genius, and there's definitely a place for that. But I think when you talk trend, you're talking mass market. You're talking about dollars and cents, and what is going to work what's going to pay dividends. And I think really that just comes down to learning, knowing who your audience is, and broadening it a little bit more if you can, and producing one or two. Like if I was going to open a restaurant, I would want to I'd identify 3 things that everybody liked.
Okay.
And for
meaning like food items.
Yeah.
Okay.
3 things.
Yeah.
3 things. And then I work my damn ass off to
be the best.
Not just to be the best at it, but just to be so overwhelmingly the best at it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, okay, who does the best burger in the city? Now you can't answer that, right?
It's very subjective.
It's very subjective. There's no like leaps and bounds. They've made this extra effort to be the goddamn best.
Right. But that would be you.
City. If I was to go that route,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I know that a lot of people can agree on this burger's insane.
Right.
Like it took Belgium and his crew to develop the dirty burger. It's not it's not a stroke of genius. It's just a reductive process. It's like, this is basically what you want on a burger. There's a great quote: if you put blue cheese on a burger, you don't like burgers, you like blue cheese.
That's so true. I hate blue cheese, but you're so
But I mean,
right.
it doesn't mean that all blue cheeseburgers are bad. It's just that it's
Yeah.
not, you got to strip all the bullshit away to get back to just what a good burger is. I was at Hundy on Friday night and took, put my name on the list. This is the place that's only been, first, it's a restaurant within a restaurant. It's only been open for like 2 or 3 weeks. It's only open on Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. This last week, it was the first time it was ever open on Thursday, right? It's not like they're not putting their advertisements on the side of buses. This is a small little thing that gets its genesis in the fact that the chef, Mike Robbins, doesn't deal with any other cooking other than deliciousness.
The
That's
best,
his
yeah.
North Star is this good? Is this taste really good?
Mm-hmm.
Can we make it better? Can we refine this so that it's not prettier or, of greater, we can shave off some food costs here.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, is this going to make me want to come back to this place and eat this 1,000 times?
Mm-hmm.
And I first saw that about that particular chef when he cooked at the Oakwood. I can't remember what I ate, but I was just like, geez,
Yeah.
this is insane.
Mm-hmm.
This is so much better than it needs to be. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where, if I could do a restaurant, it would be like cheeseburgers, banana splits, and like good cup of coffee. Just coffee.
Right.
Like remember what people walk around with jugs of coffee and they
Yes,
just fill you up.
that's you.
I would love that.
But it's the best jug
Yes,
of coffee.
and the way in which it was served would be unique too.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't be like a counter service thing. Like this is the other trend where it's like people are doing it because of the labor costs that you get to shave off by doing counter service.
Yeah.
But I would do mine behind a big horseshoe, low bar. So the person who's serving you, and taking the cash is also delivering your burger. It's you don't lose sight of you have the bar dynamic where you never lose sight of the person who's serving you, but that person is also serving 30 other people at the same time.
What are you going to call it?
I don't know.
Opening soon.
I don't know, but
I get what you're saying. I like that. I think there's a lot of truth to that. And if everyone was willing and able to kind of adopt that mindset and have that paradigm shift, it would be very interesting to see what the landscape would look like in the city.
Here's another thing that I think that Vancouver is like, what the hell? Vancouver? Figure it out. How is it that we have such a massive Asian population, from Japanese to Filipino to especially Chinese, with all the different cuisines and sub-cuisines, regional cuisines within those cuisines? Do we only have a few good hybrids? Like really, about 15 years ago or what, maybe it's longer now and I'm dating myself, but Wild Rice opened up. Stu Irving was the chef. And it was like, what the hell? Why did it take so long for a good wine list and cocktails to be married with like Kung Pao chicken? And
so good.
You know what I mean? And then Bao Bei came along and it was like, okay, I can have like the bestest pina colada that's ever been on the planet with kick-ass dumplings and fried rice and whatever else that's coming out of that kitchen, or the hybridization that they're doing at Kisatanto where they're marrying Japanese with Italian. That's insane. Why isn't there 1,000 of those?
Yeah.
Why do we have like more pizzerias than we do hybrid Asian Western restaurants that operate on a high level?
Fear.
Is it?
Yeah.
Like to me, that's what a great motivating thing.
Again, I don't know. That's just, if you were to ask me why, I would say fear. I think there's, I just think there's a lot of things holding a lot of talent back in this city. And it's unfortunate. Something I did want to touch on quickly though, as well. You were talking about Mike Robbins and his development of the menu and what they're serving now at his new kind of, I'll call it like a pop-up within his space. And him dissecting, again, I don't know the process that he went through intimately, but I'm guessing, like you said, he probably sat down with his team and they probably ate a bunch of burgers and they thought, what is good about this one and what is bad about this one? And then eventually they would have the mindset, and I don't know Mike very well, but I know him well enough to think he thought, I can do this better, which is what I feel like all entrepreneurs feel like. They see something, they think they can do better, and they go and do it. I'm wondering through that process, and feel free to offer your opinion here. I'm wondering through that process if we have the skin within our industry that is thick enough to not get bent out of shape when someone says, no, this is the best burger in the city. It's better than everyone else's burger. Does that help elevate our industry here locally? Or does it start developing silos and no one is sharing anything? And it's just like, I'm worried about me and my space and my four walls. Does it develop that, or does it allow for a bit of healthy competition?
I think most of that is noise.
Yeah.
I think that like water, genius is always going to find its way. Talent is always going to find its way around obstacles, around comparison, around allegiance and alliance. Talent is always going to rise to the top, and I think there's ample evidence for that. I think that that when it comes to classifying what's best, a lineup isn't it. Otherwise, Stefos and Jam Cafe would be the best restaurants in Vancouver. It just doesn't make any sense, right? I think that in the end, genius will out. It's always the thing that's left standing, with the title belt. It's because for me, the title belt isn't won by volume.
Oh, for sure.
It's won by by staff longevity, like how many people stay with you who buy into the concept. It's by the loyalty of customers, by the number of years you're in business, by the number of people who imitate what you do, by how many people are talking about what you do. I don't know, the insular inside baseball world of chefs and who's stolen what and who's got the right credit. I don't know. It's a weird one. That same guy, Michael Colaval, he used to say that he used to paraphrase General Patton. He used to say, the only time I worry about a soldier is when he stops bitching.
Right.
You're always going to have reason to kvetch it when you're whether a restaurateur or a cook or a chef or a waiter. You're always going to find there's always somebody who's fucking you over, or like
someone else's fault.
Yeah, I remember our art. The great art was like, why is my section empty? It's the hostess's fault, or why is the restaurant empty? Well, it's the first weekend after Labor Day, and those are like, we just pull stats out of our ass, like the day before Valentine's Day is like historically slow, and you had no idea that just you sucked.
I was gonna ask you quickly and just left my mind. What was it?
We'll edit this thoughtless part out.
No. This is we just keep this in
the
here.
raw.
This is me just stumbling over what I was gonna ask you. I'll skip it. I'm gonna go right to this show is called the Half a Dozen Hospitality Podcast. So I have for you, Mr. Andrew Morrison, the half a dozen have tos. Stay with me here.
Okay.
I have a feeling you'll do well.
It was my understanding that there would be no math in this interview.
It's long algebra.
I have to count to 6.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So it's called the Half a Dozen Have Tos. These are only 2 questions that I ask every single guest. And it gives myself and the listeners a better idea of who you are outside of what you do and why you do what you do. So what I need from you is 1 to 6. So you can do 1 or you can do all the way to 6 if you'd like, of your individual have tos, meaning what are 1 to 6 things you've experienced in your life, Andrew, that you feel like our listeners have to experience? Whether it's a trip you've taken, a book you've read, a concert you've been to, a dish you've eaten. What are 1 to 6 items that you feel like our listeners have to do?
Number 1, hallucinogenic drugs.
Okay, I'm intrigued by that.
Okay. Yep. Number 1, I feel like that was a game changer for me, where I thought one way when I was younger. And maybe I shouldn't say hallucinogenic drugs, but a dose of Pink Floyd. If you were raised with a little bit of Pink Floyd, and you can see the meaning in like where there's a great I can't remember exactly the line, but I think it's in Us and Them, where it's a song on Dark Side of the Moon, where I think the line is hanging on in quiet desperation is the English way, and that, to me, was like, okay, now I understand my father. So
well articulated.
There was like this. I don't think it was hallucinogenic drugs, because I didn't do a lot of them. But the idea of finding your way without anyone else telling you which way to go, but finding your route from inside you by, the repercussions of your actions, by by changing circumstances, by I could name 6 things on just this one thing, but I'll say my next thing would be finding love and losing it.
Ooh,
is vital, because then everybody that you love afterwards is like there's a roadmap to what to do, what not to do.
Yeah,
and I think
that's
having your heart squeezed is a great way to have meaningful relationships.
I like that one. That's a first on this show.
3 would be really finding the thing that makes you happy, and not accepting, and sticking to it, and working diligently and having faith in yourself that you can get her done.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah, that's 3 things. 4 things would be to, when you're young, to go outside of your comfort place, to abandon everything that you've come to know and go somewhere. If you can, you save up your pennies and do like I have a 16-year-old and a 13-year-old right now. Not right now, but I mean, there could be more. I don't know. These are the 2 children that I'm aware of. But the 16-year-old, my wife, every year she goes to Japan.
Okay.
It's not an expensive, luxurious thing. She waits, she gets a cheap ticket, and she stays in those little tiny coffin pod hotels in downtown Tokyo. And she doesn't speak the language, doesn't care to learn. She just goes there, and it just puts the zap on her head, where she just goes out and she walks the streets, eats yakitori, cheap ramen and stuff. And that's the extent of, that's how she vacations, is she just tunes out in this place where you can't tune in.
Right.
Like it's physically impossible for you to buy into it because you're there for only a week, and there's so much going on.
Way too much.
And so my 16-year-old son saw that and was like, he's in an accelerated program at high school where there's a lot of pressure put on him. He's like, I just want to go and see what mom saw. And so I was like, you can go ahead and do it, buddy, but you got to get a job. You got to save up your money, and you got to buy your own. I'm not going to do it. So at 16, he did it.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. So like, I see the value in that. I thought I saw it just in myself because of what I did. I went overseas young and went to a really kind of a scary place because in 1994 they were just killing people in the news in in Vancouver. You'd hear, another 40 people were killed in an attack on Heidelberg in Cape Town, and I was like, that's where I want to go to school. It was like. It took me out of myself. It made me appreciate so much more what we have in Vancouver. So I still do that every year. I take time out and I go a place by myself where I don't have any of the crutches locally. And lately it's been wilderness. Like for me, it's just going. I have an old Volkswagen van and it takes me out into the middle of nowhere and I camp. And that's what I like most. So that's my number 4, is to just leave.
Yeah, I like that one a lot.
Leave so you can appreciate where it is that you come back from. Yeah,
definitely. Did you want to add 5 and 6? Or are you good? You can tap out there.
Well, 5 would be to find balance through intake, and by that I mean I touched on drugs. Find a balance. Like if you're gonna fuck around, be wise. Know that there's an end to it. And drinking. My stepdad was an alcoholic, and he wasn't an abusive guy, but at the same time, it was like, what a fucking drag. Yeah. Like if you can't find balance, I think that's one of the big tricks to enjoying life is balancing out the ways in which you entertain yourself and to have a good time. And I think that drugs and alcohol are just in our society, the number one, that's the low rung on the ladder that everyone reaches to. And I think it's also that one low rung on the ladder that everyone fucks up on. Not everyone, but you know what I mean? Like just try and maintain an even keel. Number 6 would be to do stuff that kind of scares you every once in a while.
Such as?
Do the next thing, the new thing. Do the thing that you've been thinking about, even though you've been doing the other thing. There's that other thing that's on the horizon that you're like, I don't know if I should do that thing because I'm doing this thing. Do it.
Do that thing.
Just try it. Done is better than perfect.
I like that. Yeah, I heard a while ago the quote, if your first version is perfect, you've waited too long.
Yeah. That's good.
And it's so true. No matter what you're doing, it's not supposed to be perfect. Just do it.
Yeah. And maybe it will be perfect.
Yeah, maybe it will. Yeah, exactly. Maybe you get lucky. The last one I have for you, sir, is the half a dozen haven't yet. So kind of a bucket list things. It seems to me like you have done a lot. You achieved a lot, obviously, in your life from me looking on to your life from a bird's eye view. Obviously, I know nothing truly about what you've experienced, but from what you shared today, I feel like you've done quite a bit. But do you have anything, whether it be one item or half a dozen items that you still have yet to do?
Oh, plenty.
Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, I always wanted to teach history.
Okay.
I've always wanted to make a like, it's great having children because they're like empty vessels that you get to fill up. You know, my big goal in life, I think, is to make a difference in the place where I live. Like, I don't want to ever become stagnant or predictable. And every once in a while, I'll feel like I'm like the stuff that I'm creating, like the writing that I'm doing or the projects that I work on. I always want to have a new project. Like, we started a lexicon on Scout, which is like a dictionary and it was based on a book that I read when I was a kid by Flaubert, the guy who wrote Madame Bovary, one of his lesser known books. He's a French dude because I'm a pompous, pretentious piece of shit when I was 13. But it was called A Dictionary of Received Ideas. And it was an A to Z book, a dictionary essentially. Mm-hmm. But like under L, it would be like lawyer. And then the definition was like a piece of shit you can't trust. Right. You know, so it was like, I always like, when I was a kid, I was like, this is so hilarious that he's taking this thing that's super serious and making it like, it's kind of Python-esque kind of thing. Yeah. So I always thought that every city should have its own dictionary, and Vancouver is, you know, because it's a city that I've grown up with, and I've lived in other cities like Toronto or Victoria or Cape Town, or, you know, that it has its own. There are words here that don't, or phrases and things resonate, that unless you've been here for a while. Like this morning I did one. It's not all funny either. There are things like this morning I wrote the definition, like an actual definition of inside passage. So so inside passage is from, I said it was like it's like the best name for a psychedelic rock band that hasn't existed, but you know, because that's true. It's a great name for a psych rock band, but it's, you know, the inside passage of islands and networks and waterways that go all the way up to Alaska. Now, if I wasn't from here, I wouldn't know that, but now I do.
There you go.
So it's filed under I. So that always keeps me interested because I can't write about food all the time. I always want to contribute that something new that people aren't doing. So when I tire of that, or the restaurant graveyard, or, you know, the you should know column, I always want to share things about the place that I live that other people might not be picking up on yet, or, you know, this generation, I think in particular, the generation maybe that's coming up, my kids' generation, not that I fear for the future, but the respect and value that is placed on history, I feel is endangered by tech and this fascination with the now, and, you know,
and what's next.
It's like, well, okay, in order to understand that, you should have some basic understanding of where you are, and what's here and what was here before you were, and because that informs, you know, the decisions that you make and the city that you live in. There's a value to it. I
think that education, just knowing the dualism between something like there can't be a future if there wasn't a past.
And I feel like you've got a responsibility to actually, people, kids, older people, whatever, it's an easy thing to like something or retweet something, you know, but to actually try and understand something,
really comprehend it,
is a challenge. So I'd like to focus my work on that going forward.
I like it. Powerful. Any others?
Any other things that I'd like to?
Any other haven't yet?
Well, I am in the middle of trying to see every single national park in the U.S.
Oh, so where are you at on the list right now?
I'm at 33. So I've done 56.
Right.
So that's a project that's 4 years I've been doing. So the problem is that I could give a shit about the other 23.
Oh no!
Yeah, like that's not true. There are 3 in Florida that sound awesome, 4 in Alaska that sound awesome, and 2 in Hawaii that, of course, you just totally want to go to. Yeah. But there are some ones where you're just like, "What? You made this a national park? This is bullshit."
I wonder if those though will actually end up surprising you. Like I always liken this industry to the music and art industry or space, and I think every once in a while you're surprised by that band on a Tuesday night that you just didn't think was going to be awesome, and they end up being like, man, these guys are really
That's
good.
happened. That's happened where I was like, I had no idea that was a national park. What?
Okay, right.
Yeah,
right.
like there's this one
Wait,
place.
we're in it right now.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there's this place called Pinnacles in sort of north central California that I didn't even know existed. I thought, I've seen every national park in California now. Cool, move on to the next place. And I was like, wait a second, what's this green dot? Pinnacles? What the hell? And then I went there and was totally blown away.
Oh, so that's cool.
It's rad.
Yeah.
But now that I've taken a look at the whole chessboard, so to speak, and I'm plotting out my next moves,
Right.
I find myself going back to, like, this May, I'm going back to the Canyonlands in Utah and stuff. So I don't know. It's still like I'd like to close that loop and have them all done. You know, I'm a nerd, so I'll collect all I was a Boy Scout.
Okay.
So I collect all the badges, you know, and the stickers. So
yeah.
I feel like I've just revealed
a very dark secret. Everyone's like, I thought this guy was super cool.
No.
How are you? So besides the badges, how are you recording that? Is it something you're doing? Like, are you taking your camera with you and snapping photos? Are you doing video, or are you doing audio stuff?
I do. I try to break down in every single the van breaks down in every single national park out of cell phone service. So I'm trying to break the records for that. No, I will. I flirt with travel writing every once in a while. Like, I'll do stuff for like weird, like an in-flight magazine in Australia will ask me to do something, or, you know, but not much. There might be like down the line doing something larger that has nothing to do with food and more to do with travel. But for now, I'm just trying to
knock off those other
tick the boxes and enjoy
awesome.
myself.
Before I let you go, I want to take a moment to say thank you so much again for giving your time to myself and the listeners and this podcast. It means so much to me that yourself and every other guest that's been on the show has been so generous with their time. I truly enjoyed our conversation today.
Me too.
And I would love at some point to do round 2, because I feel like there's so much more that we could kind of rap about. And I also want to thank you for unknowingly inspiring me to do this, unknowingly inspiring me to put a list together in a interview.
That's crazy. I don't believe it.
Yeah. It's true. So you and Michelle and your team, you're not only inspiring me, but I'm sure you're inspiring many, many other people. And you are how do I want to say this without making you feel too great about yourself? What you're doing matters in this space and in this industry. So I applaud you and I give you guys kudos for what you're doing.
That's very kind and generous. Thank
and
you.
Again, I don't want to speak on behalf of everyone, but I will and say thank you so much for doing what you do for this industry, because I feel like this industry needs people like you and your team to celebrate it and educate the general population on what really goes on in this space. So again, thank you so much for you doing what you do and the rest of the team at SCOUT.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Before I officially let you go, if people do want to reach out, they do want to kind of get in touch with you or the SCOUT team, or just understand what SCOUT is, how best they do that?
You could go to scoutmagazine.ca or follow us on Twitter or Instagram at SCOUT Magazine.
Perfect. Yeah. Easy. Any other passing thoughts before we close off?
I'm going to probably see about that chicken burger across the street at Bells and Whistles.
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you guys for tuning in as you do week after week. I truly appreciate and love you all.
Share this with your friends.
Yeah, share this with your friends for sure. Share, like, and subscribe. That is Andrew. I am Brad. This is the Half a Dozen Hospitality Podcast. Thank you guys again for tuning in. You know what to do until next time. Be good and do good. That's it. We did it.
Sweet.
Well done.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.